So that was the track, and by the way, I recorded this little track for my upcoming second solo record, which will be available in a few months, so stay tuned for that. So let's start with the rhythm guitars, and as you can see here, there are 4 tracks, so it's quad tracked, and on each single track there is just the Toneforge Jeff Loomis plugin and nothing else. There is something going on the I group, which I will show you in a few minutes, but on the single tracks there is nothing but just the Toneforge Jeff Loomis plugin. So the rhythm guitars alone sound like this. Sounds pretty nice in my opinion. So I used the same setting for guitar 1 and 2, and a slightly different setting for guitar 3 and 4. And by the way, I used my old Schecter Jeff Loomis signature model, the very first one, for this demo, loaded with the AHB 3 blackouts from Seymour Duncan. And I love this guitar, especially for recording. So let's start with the first pair of guitars. And I use the lead amp for this, with pretty basic EQ settings. Not that much gain from the amp itself, because I activated the green pedal with a little bit of drive, a little bit of balance, and the tone knob at around 11 o'clock. So the tone is a little bit smoother. And for the cab section I use the Bogwin digital one, the Model 4. And the Bogwin impulse responses, I'm sure you notice, these are great. No post FX going on, no post EQ going on. It's on, but there is nothing going on here. And no dynamic section here. So for guitar 3 and 4, I used the second amp, the rhythm amp, and I used a little bit more gain, a little bit more bass, a little bit of treble, mids, more presence, because the amp is very thick and dark sounding. I think it's a rectifier emulation, and I really like the presence here. And also the green pedal is engaged with a little bit less drive, but the other settings are pretty much the same. So for the cab I used the Model 1, again from Bogwin, and no post FX, no post EQ. Now there is something. I reduced the 5K area a little bit, minus 2 dB at 5K. So again, nothing special, just a subtle move. And no dynamic section. So let's move on to the post-processing of the DI group. I have 2 plugins here, the FabFilter EQ and the Pro MB, also from FabFilter. So for the EQ, I have just a few moves here. A high pass at 120. It's pretty extreme, but I like it for this sound, and I really want the bass to have a free space for the bass sound. There is a really wide and broad dip. This is for the overall boxy mid-range at around 555. And sometimes I do this with 0.8, 0.7 Q filter. It's very wide and broad, but just a few dB. That's minus 1.33. And be careful with that. If you overdo this, you can completely destroy your guitar tone. But just with a few dB, with a subtle move, it really can clean up your overall mid-range. And very important is to do these moves with the full mix going on. I always do that, because if you do that in solo with the guitars, your brain is constantly reacting to the frequency shifts, and I guarantee you it drives you nuts in a few minutes and you're making bad decisions. So in my opinion, always do this with the full mix going on. So this little dip here is just for the high end. It's a little bit harsh, just a tiny bit. And here we have the low pass, but this time with a 12 dB per octave slope, and the high pass is an 18 dB per octave slope. So, and that's it for the EQ section. So now let's hear the guitars with the EQ. And without the EQ. It's not a big difference, but it really cleans up the guitars and they sound more focused and tighter in my opinion. And now let's hear the guitars with the bass engaged, so you really can hear how the bass and the guitars sound nice together. So that's it for the EQ. And the last plugin is the Pro MB, a multi-band compressor from FabFilter. And I just used one band from around 60 up to 300 Hz just to reduce the low end boom of the palm mutes, because every time you play palm mutes there is a low end bump going on, and this is the famous Andy Sneap twig. I think you all know this. And it's also not a big difference, but just to tame the palm mutes a tiny little bit. So as you can see here, while the palm mutes are going on, it reduces this frequency band a little bit, and when the open strings are going on, it stays at 0, so it does nothing. And this is exactly what I wanted to. So, and that's it for the post-processing of the rhythm guitars. So let's talk about the lead sound. And as you can see here, there is just one track. I played just one track for the lead guitar, and usually I do a lot more tracks for the lead sound, some doublings, overdubs and going on, but for this demo I did just one. So, and here's the same on the single track. There is just the Jeff Loomis plugin going on, again with the lead amp with a little bit more gain, the shred knob at 30, little bit more mids, less highs and less presence, because the lead sound is very sharp already and I don't want to add more harshness to it. So it's pretty basic here. For the cab, again from Brooklyn, the Model 4, and the Queen pedal with a slightly different setting. For the post FX, I used the Skybox in the cloud setting with the mix knob at 20 and the Echo Man also with the mix knob at 20, just to have a nice delay and reverb sound. There's nothing going on the post EQ and nothing on the dynamic section. So the lead sound in solo sounds like this. So on the DI group, there is something going on. First is the EQ. I'm honest, this is just an experiment. This is a really wide slope for the dB per octave for the low pass. I'm sorry, for the high pass at around 100 Hertz, because I really want that smooth transition. And there is a mid bump going on, a little mid boost at around 800, and a low pass at around 9K. And that's it for the EQ. The second thing is again a multiband compressor, but this time there is a little bit more going on. So the lead sound is very sharp already, and I really play in different positions on the fretboard, and when I really go high up the neck, I want to bring back a little bit of that low end and low mids, and the multiband compressor is the perfect choice for that in my opinion. And because I play palm mutes, I play in different fretboard positions, I play fast and slow, and the different bands, it's not that much going on, but just these tiny movements makes the sound more round overall, in my opinion. So you can hear and see this. I really like how this reacts, because when I'm down the neck, it reduces some of the low end boom, also for the palm mutes, and when I really go up the neck, it reduces some of the harshness of the notes. But on every band I have the attack time at 40, so a little bit slower, here at 30, here at 40, and here this is just the ultra high end. So the notes will come through, but the compressor really reacts to the picking of the notes. And it really makes the lead sound more round, in my opinion. I really like that for this lead part. So, and the last one is an L1 limiter, just to catch a few peaks, nothing special going on. So, and that's it for the lead sound. So last but not least, the clean sound. Again, very simple. First 3 tracks, 2 for the rhythm and 1 for the lead sound. And the clean guitars alone sound like this. Sounds very nice in my opinion, a little bit spacey and dreamy. And the 2 written tracks are panned to the left and right, 100%. And the lead track is a little bit out of the middle. And for the plugin, I used a setting, the Loomis Song Clean setting. Usually I don't rely on presets that much, because I always make my own. But for this thing I really like this preset, it sounds nice. The only thing I changed is the mix knob on the reverb at 40 instead of 50, so it's a little bit less spacey. And that's it. I use the same setting for the, I think for the lead tone I reduced, no, it's also at 40. Yeah. So on the single tracks, I used an CLA2A compressor to tame the dynamics a little bit. It really tames the very quiet and very loud tones, and it brings the overall clean tone a little bit more under control. I really like this compressor for clean sound. And the second one is again an L1 limiter to catch some of the peaks. And I use this combination, a compressor and a limiter, on always every clean sound, because you really have to tame the dynamics and the peaks of the clean sound. And as you can see here, it just tames the very high peaks. Be very careful with that, so because you don't want to destroy your clean tone, because the clean sound is very dynamic and you have to get it under control just a little bit, but not too much. So the same settings for the second track and the same for the lead track. And for the lead track, the compressor is a little bit less extreme, so just to tame the very high and very low dynamics. And for the guitar bass, there is again a Farbfilter, EQ, with just a few settings, nothing special going on. High and low pass, a little boost at around 100 Hz, and a little dip at around 190. And again, a multi-band compressor. With pretty similar settings to the lead sound, but it's just a tiny little bit to tame the overall dynamics. And again an L1 limiter. And as you can see, there are just 1 or 2 peaks which are catched by the L1 limiter. Really be careful with that, just a tiny little bit to catch some peaks. So, and that's it for the video. I really hope you like this little walkthrough, and if you have any questions, let me know in the comments. And yeah, thanks for watching and bye bye.